Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving right into the hidden realities of Princess Diana's life inside the royal family. You know, what emerges from the records isn't just a story about glamour. It's actually about a deeply calculated effort to change an incredibly rigid institution from the inside out. We're going to explore exactly how she pulled that off and why we're still feeling the impact of her choices today. Let's get into it.
So what is truly left to know about the world's most famous woman? I mean, you probably think you know her story, right? We've all seen the iconic photographs, we've heard the headlines, but looking closely at the source material, there's this fascinating, almost systematic pattern of how she actively dismantled traditional expectations. This wasn't some accidental rebellion. No, it was a series of deliberate, everyday choices that completely shocked the royal establishment.
Section 1. The People's Princess, a study in contrast.
A crucial theme we see over and over in her life was this absolute dedication to being, well, normal. And I know, that sounds like a simple concept, but think about it. When you're suddenly thrust into a world of palaces, strict protocols, and just immense wealth, embracing the normal is actually a profound act of defiance. She was absolutely determined to act like a commoner. She held on to the reality of everyday life despite her massive royal status, actively resisting being put into that untouchable bubble.
Instead of demanding the special treatment she automatically received, she often chose a commoner's life. I mean, just imagine the shock of seeing a senior royal literally choosing to stand in a public queue. She actually used everyday public transport, like riding buses, sitting right alongside ordinary citizens. And she really prioritized interacting directly with the public rather than just waving from some distant balcony. The record showed these weren't just quick photo ops. They were genuine choices to stay connected to the real world. It was completely unprecedented for someone of her rank to intentionally seek out the mundane like that.
Moving on to Section 2, Breaking Royal Motherhood Rules.
The contrast between tradition and Diana's approach here is just striking. Look, for generations, royal tradition dictated that kids were raised behind closed doors. They had private tutors, strict palace protocols, and were kept largely separate from the public until they were much older. But then you look at Diana's choice. She pushed back hard against centuries of tradition, insisting on public schooling and normal childhood experiences. Instead of hiding behind palace walls, she wanted a grounded, actual reality for her sons.
Now, this absolutely caused friction behind palace walls, but she won some massive victories for her boys. She enrolled Prince William in a normal school, which was a huge break from precedent. She took her kids out to everyday places. We're talking amusement parks, fast food restaurants, ordinary shops. She acted as a standard hands-on mother, fiercely protecting their right to have a standard childhood. She knew the heavy burden they were eventually going to carry, and she firmly believed that understanding how normal people lived was the absolute best preparation for their future.
All right, Section 3. A Life of Social Work.
Here's where she really brought a powerful new concept to the monarchy: radical empathy. Traditionally, royal charity meant, attending galas, signing checks, maybe doing a brief, heavily guarded walkabout. But Diana redefined this entirely. She practiced radical empathy by engaging directly and physically with marginalized communities and the severely ill. She systematically broke down those royal boundaries of distance and formality. She didn't just fundraise from afar, she physically showed up for people when they needed it most. And yeah, often in ways that made the establishment incredibly uncomfortable.
The records show she spent a significant amount of unpublicized time in hospitals. She made it a real point to visit cancer wards, to literally sit on patients' beds, hold their hands, and just listen. She offered genuine human comfort rather than a polite royal wave. By removing those physical barriers, like literally taking off her gloves to shake hands, she brought a level of profound humanity to a role that, let's be honest, had historically been very rigid and detached.
Next up, Section 4, Outshining the Royal Family.
So her immense popularity ended up fundamentally disrupting the traditional hierarchy of public attention. Usually, the reigning monarch and the direct heirs are supposed to hold the spotlight, right? They are the absolute center of the institution. But then we have the Diana effect, a spouse entirely eclipsing the fame of the actual heir to the throne. This was just not how the system was designed to work at all, and it created a massive imbalance.
The source explicitly notes, her fame and public adoration completely eclipsed Prince Charles. Literally everywhere they went, the crowds were strictly there for her. And as you can imagine, this created an incredibly complex dynamic of public relations for the institution. The royal family is built on a very specific, rigid order of precedence, and Diana's sheer global star power unintentionally turned that whole order completely upside down.
Which brings us to Section 5, a tragic legacy.
We can really track the trajectory of her incredibly impactful life through these distinct phases. It begins with her quiet royal entry into the family, where she was fully expected to just follow tradition. But it quickly moves into this period of rule-breaking, where she completely normalized royal motherhood and charity. That, in turn, led to the eclipse phase of unprecedented global fame, and then, ultimately, her tragic passing, a sudden, devastating loss that shocked the entire world and left a massive void in the global landscape.
Her passing was undeniably sudden and just tragic. However, the way she lived her life resulted in a permanent shift in royal expectations. The bridge she built between the isolated monarchy and the everyday public, that simply could not be undone. The institution literally couldn't go back to the way things were before she arrived. She set an entirely new standard for what the public expects from their royal figures. A standard of approachability, deep empathy, and genuine hands-on involvement.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought to reflect on. How did one woman's rebellion permanently force the modern royal family to become more human? Because despite the tragedy that ended her story, Diana's absolute insistence on being normal, on feeling and experiencing the world as an everyday person, forever changed the DNA of the modern monarchy. The ripples of her choices, they are still highly visible in exactly how the royal family operates today. Thank you so much for joining me for this analysis. I really hope it's given you a deeper, more structured understanding of the true, lasting impact of the People's Princess.